Hey, how's it going? It's Travis Mortz again. I was spending some time down in my lab waiting for my Jobo to heat up, and I thought I'd take this time to talk about this new camera I just got back, the Fuji GW690. This is a 6x9 rangefinder that is known as the Texas Leica, and it does compare to the Leica in many ways, and we're going to get into that. So here we go. So here we have the Texas Leica. Although I don't have a Leica at the moment, I do have a Nikon rangefinder, which is very similar in size. So I just put them next to each other just to give you guys an idea of how big this thing really is. Even when I first got this camera, I didn't really anticipate how big it was going to be until I actually had it in my hands and got to deal with it. It is a beast. So a little bit about this camera. This is the Fuji GW690II. Now, Fuji made 19 different versions of this camera. They had a 6x9 version, they had a 6x7 version, they had a 6x8 version, and then they've also had 3 versions of each of those. So there's actually quite a few of these out there. They're pretty common and they're relatively affordable. This particular model was released in 1985, so this isn't really a vintage camera per se. It's just an old film camera, and this is the second version of the GW690, and this is actually before this camera was the GL690, which is a removable lens camera. Very similar to this, but Fuji realized that the sales of the longer focal length lenses weren't very popular, and that making a fixed lens camera would be not only more reliable, but it would be lighter weight and more affordable. So they decided to throw out the removable lenses and just made fixed lens cameras, which are extremely reliable. So I'm gonna get into some of the basics of this camera. One thing that I've always loved about this Fuji 6x9 that I thought was just great is on the bottom you can see there's actually a film counter, or a frame counter, if you will. And what it does is it keeps track of how many times this camera has been fired. Now, that's pretty interesting because most cameras can just be fired a bunch of times. Well, not the Fuji 6x9. This camera only operates when it's loaded with film. So because of that, the counter does not go up, and therefore your shutter doesn't really get worn out quicker than usual because it only fires when there's film in the camera. So it's a really cool thing about this camera, which is kind of a quirk to know, but when you're out there buying, it might be a handle to get one for cheaper if the guy you're buying it from doesn't know that. I always love finding a good deal and trying to show someone that this camera doesn't work. It's pretty believable, but it does work, and we're gonna get into it. We're gonna load some film just so we could operate this camera a little bit better. And what I'll do is I'm gonna switch views now so you guys can take a better look at the camera itself and not have to look at me anymore. So here we have the Fuji GW690. Like I said, this camera does not operate unless it has film in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to load up some of this Kodak 400 CN, which is just about the worst thing on earth. And this is black and white processed C41 film. Look at new black and white film for C41. This was expired in 1990, and thank God nobody has shot it in 16 years. So what we're going to do is we're going to load this up, and I'm going to see how fast we can shoot it through the Fuji, because this is just not good for anybody. So here we go. Oh yeah, roll of Kodak 400 black and white film. I'm so excited. So here on the side is how you open it. There we go. We're going to pull up these bottom things, and these actually kind of stick out, which is kind of nice. So you could pull your film out, and they'll stay out there. Well, usually they will. There we go. Now it's out. This one, usually they lock out. Here we go. Cool. Got our roll of black and white. Best film out there. Kodak. Alrighty. We've got our leader. This is really neat because it's really just like a 35mm, but it's 120 film. And that's what I love about the Fujis, is that loading them is so simple and easy. So here we go. We crank, keep on cranking, and see here we've got a red dot. See? And we line up our arrow with that red dot, close it up. It's hard to see the counter. Here we go. Here we are at number 1. And as you see here, this is for, in Japan they used to make short rolls of 120, so that's what this 4 exposure is for. And then they also have 8 exposures of 120, and then this camera also accepts 220 film, which is really neat because 8 frames isn't a whole lot, so you'd like to have a little more than that, of course. Now, the great part about this camera is its simplicity and how reliable it is. So as you can see, all we have is a shutter release here. This is also a vertical shutter release, which is awesome. And then here we have our shutter speeds and our apertures. So very, very simple, much like a Hasselblad. For those of you who shoot Hasselblad, it's very much like that. And you could even keep them paired if you just grab both the rings at the same time. See these rings here? Very, very nifty. And one thing that the Fuji 6x9 does not have is a bulb setting. It only has T, which opens our shutter, and then what do we do to close it? Crank it to close. Man, we just overexposed that frame of 400. Bummer. So we're going to bring it back down. We'll actually put it at a second. And as you can see, we've got our vertical release here. So here would be me shooting it normal. And then if I wanted to shoot it vertical, man, it's kind of weird to do here, but you could use it. Wonderful. We've got our focus scale here. Also, we've got our depth of field, gauge here. It's going to tell us what our focus will be. 3 feet at f32 is going to be a whole big range. And you see the focus throw on this is relatively short, which is really convenient for rangefinder shooting. I hate a long throw where you got to go 2 or 3 times. This is real quick. You could cover your whole range in 1 turn, and that's wonderful. So you got a place to put your film box. We better do that. So I remember what kind of film we have in here. Just remember the mistakes I've made. Here we go. Put it in there, and all my buddies will know what kind of film I'm shooting. There we go, 400 CN, beautiful. This is also a double stroke, much like a Leica, so it's appropriately named, I think. There's a lot of Leica characteristics to this, except for its size, of course. So now we've got some film in our Fuji 6x9. Like you guys saw, very simple to load, very simple to use. The simplicity of this camera it rivals anything. I've had this camera before. I just recently got it back from the person I sold it to. And, I kind of underestimated its ability just because I'm a Hasselblad guy. I like Zeiss glass, and, you can't tell me different. But when I got the results back from this camera, they were phenomenal. And, it being 6x9 is the largest, it's about the largest medium format frame that you're going to get with a normal kind of camera. And the resolution trumps any digital camera on the market by far. So that's the real beauty of it, is that it's a 35mm aspect ratio, but it's a huge negative, a really huge negative. So I'd like to show you guys just a couple frames that I recently shot. And these photos were actually shot on FomaPan 400, which, for those of you who watched my last video, I raved about the FomaPan 100. But I've heard that the 400 is real garbage, so I thought I'd give it a shot, and no surprise, it is pretty garbage. So if you see on this frame here, the paper backing actually projected through and onto my film, and that's not okay. That's not something that I typically look for, although it sometimes turns out neat. If this was a wedding, I would be furious if I had shot that film. So I always try to think about that kind of aspect. So as far as the Fomapan 400, I would probably stay away from it unless shooting 35mm, in which maybe, but it's very thin. Not too happy about it. But the shots came out great nonetheless. There's just some really weird stuff going on with it that I probably never shoot it again. So anyways, the Fuji 6x9, that's pretty much, it's so simple, I don't really have much else to talk about. There's one more little thing here, which is our PC port, which is pretty neat, but other than that, it's pretty much covered. It's a very simple camera, and it's huge. You can see really how big this thing is. And I'd like to give you guys just a little look inside the viewfinder to the best of my ability, and just to show you guys really how big this thing is and how bright it is. So let's try to do that before I finish up the video. So here we are inside of the Fuji's viewfinder. This is the best I could do, but as you can see, this small circle in the center, it's very subtle, but it's very clear when you're looking through it with an eyeball. So it's just a small circle, unlike the Leica M3 or Leica anything is where it's a square. And I really do like that. This is just a small circle, and as you can see, here we go. See the rangefinder moving. Very easy to line up, very quick. I'm doing it rather difficult, but yeah, this is the inside of the Fuji finder. So the lines are very clear, and the finder is very clear, which is very nice. So here we go, we're gonna focus on this stuff. Perfect. Thanks again for watching. There's not really a whole lot else I could say about this wonderful camera. I suggest if any of you have been interested in getting one, just go for it. This kind of camera would sell for maybe around $300 to $350. And the great thing about vintage cameras is that they have already lost the value that they once were worth. So when you buy a vintage camera like this, there's really a whole lot of security in it, because even if you don't like it, you could sell it for what you bought it for. It's not going to lose value because you've owned it. So, so yeah, that's kind of my camera hoarder mentality. But I hope I could, put it onto some of you guys and get you guys hoarding cameras also, because that keeps film, being rotated, just like this Kodak 400 CN I've gotten here. So. Stay tuned for another episode. I think I'm gonna do some film developing stuff pretty soon here. So for those of you guys who are looking forward to that, I am excited to do that as well. Until then, I will see you guys.